As so often for this course section, I got a brand new project, brand new Go file and a module that I created. And the Go file is basically empty. You know that from earlier course sections already. Now in this Go file, I want to fetch some user input. I want to get some user input, and to keep things simple and just focus on conditional code execution, we'll simply get the age of the user then, and then do or output different things based on the user's age. Because that is a typical use case. You have some user input, and depending on what the user provided, you might want to do different things in your code. And of course, that's just one example. You could also be getting data from a database, and you want to do different things based on which data you got. So very often when writing code, you want to execute different code based on some condition. And that's what we'll do here. So for that, to get started, let's first of all grab some user input. And of course, that works in the same way we did it multiple times before. We can create a new variable and use the buff.io package, which we of course then also have to import, to create a new reader. And to that reader, we pass OS and import that package as well, .standard in. And then we can use that reader to get some input, because on that reader struct, which it is, we have a method called readString. And that readString method reads until a certain delimiter, which in this case again is the line break here for me. And that then will give us that user input. So here I got the user input, and I got a second return value about which I don't care at the moment, though we will talk about that return value a little bit later in this section again, because in this section this will finally become important. Okay, so that gives us that user input. As before, we might want to clean that. So we might want to set user input equal to strings using the strings package, replace, and then replace our user input string, and that here should be colon =, of course, so that this works. So then replace our user input string and replace the line break text with an empty snippet, and then add -1 to do this for all occurrences of this line break. So now we got that clean user input, and let's say we expect the age of the user here. So I'll actually use the format package before we get that input, and of course therefore also import the format package up here. And on that format package, I'll use the print function to print something in the same line as the user will then be able to enter the input. And I'll say, please enter your age, white space. And therefore this user input will actually be the user's age. And hence we could rename this to user age input in all those places to make that a bit clearer. Now, since it's an age, we also might want to convert it. So I'll use that strconf package, which we also used before already, and import that as well. And on that strconf package, we can now use the parse int function, not parse float, because the age should be an integer number, and then pass user age input to parse int to try to extract an integer number from that user input. And therefore here I got my user age then, and this also returns two return values, and again I'll not care about the second one right now. In addition, user age input also wants more parameter values. It wants to know what our base integer is, so which number system you want to use in the end. And here we can use 0 for that base, which means the base will be inferred from the number that was entered. So if it is a regular decimal system number, it will be treated as such. And then we can also set a bit size here, which basically controls how big the number may be that's entered. And I'll use 64 here, though a smaller bit size would do as well. But with that, we now do parse that integer number provided by the user, and hence we got that user age value. And now it's time for the conditional code. Because now with that code prepared here, as a next step, I wanna print different messages in the command line based on the value the user entered. And that is a common scenario, as I mentioned before, that you have different pieces of code that should execute based on different user inputs or, in general, different pieces of data you got in your application.